Today we're making traditional Southern buttermilk biscuits, recipe courtesy of an actual Southern grandma. These are quick, they're delicious, and they are just what your dinner, your brunch, or your breakfast needs, so let's get cooking. So for our biscuits, we will start with dry ingredients. We're going to put 2 cups of all-purpose flour in our mixing bowl. As always, ingredients, amounts, and directions are in the description for the video. A little bit more. There we go. All right. To that, we're going to add, these are classic buttermilk biscuits, so of course the main leavener is baking powder. We have 2 rounded teaspoons of baking powder. And rounded just means a little bit more than full. Don't level it off. All right. We have a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. All right, so we're going to give, there we go. So we're going to give those dry ingredients a little mix. And since I'm going to be using a pastry blender to mix these biscuits together, I'm just going to go ahead and use the pastry blender to mix the dry ingredients. Now we're going to add our shortening. For this we'll use vegetable shortening, 4.5 tablespoons. This is another one where it was 4 rounded tablespoons, and I've always decided that's 4.5. Conveniently measured out here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a bit. I like to put my shortening in the refrigerator before I make this, just so that it doesn't melt in too quickly. We're going to cut that in with our pastry blender. Okay, we don't want this to be mixed too thoroughly. We want little bits of shortening coated in the dry mixture, and that's what's going to make our biscuits flaky. Same principle when you're making pie dough, croissants, anything that's going to have a flaky texture. You actually want little pockets of fat in with the dry ingredients. And as needed, I'll scrape off my pastry blender, and we're going to mix this until the largest bits of shortening are about pea-sized at most. So let's mix a little bit more. All right, so our shortening is mixed into the flour mixture, and you can see here there are little bits of shortening that again are no bigger than pea-sized, along with some smaller bits. If you don't have a pastry blender, you can do this in a food processor. Just have a real light touch. You can do it with forks. Some folks will do this just with their hands, but obviously you want to do that quickly. You don't want to warm up your shortening and have it melt in from the heat of your hands. All right, so to this we're going to add 3/4 cup of buttermilk, oven's ready, and we're going to mix this with a wooden spoon, a spatula, whatever works, until we have kind of a slightly sticky dough. And once that's mixed in about like this, all right, clumping together, but there's still some dry mixture there, but no visible bits of little puddles of buttermilk. All right, so now that it's to that point, I'll clean off my spoon so we don't leave any dough behind. Good enough. Set this aside. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of flour on my hands, like so. And I'm just gonna knead that a little bit more with my hands until it comes together into a cohesive dough. We don't want to mix it too hard because again, we want to keep those pockets of shortening in there so our biscuits will be flaky. But we need it to come together, maybe 4 or 5 turns with our hands, whatever it takes, to just bring that together as a dough. No matter how well you flour your hands, you're going to get biscuit dough stuck to them. That's okay. Just kind of keep flicking it back in. All right, cleaned our hands up. This is what our dough should look like now that we've kneaded it for 30-45 seconds by hand. Still craggy, not completely uniform, but it's one cohesive dough. Now that we've done that, we're going to put some flour on our counter. Turn our dough out, like so. Get a little bit of that flour on our hands, and we're just gonna kind of press that into a slightly flatter piece. Get a little flour on the top. Give it a quick roll or a couple with a rolling pin. And we're looking for this to be about a 1/2 inch in thickness. Looks pretty good. And now what we're going to do is cut these out. I use, I think it's about a 2-inch cutter. It's if you have a set of like 3 biscuit cutters, this is the medium one that usually gets all the work. Mine has gotten so much work that its handle's fallen off, but it still works great. If you don't have a biscuit cutter, the top of a glass works. You can, flour that and do that. I'm gonna get a little flour on the edge here, but this doesn't usually stick too badly. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and cut some of these out. You should wind up with about 12. You'll see I kind of tuck that corner back in. I'd rather have them be a little bit oddly shaped than have a lot of dough to re-roll, because if you re-roll, you wind up smashing down some of those pockets of flakiness, and it's better to just have them be a little oddly shaped instead, but nice and flaky. All right. So I'll try and have as few scraps as possible as I do this. And take those odd little corners and just tuck them back in. Woo, almost lost that guy. And for this last one, I'm just going to kind of roll this dough into a small biscuit. All right, so now that we've got our dough formed into biscuits, we're going to place those on an ungreased baking sheet. And for higher rising biscuits, you want your biscuits to touch just a little bit, okay, and that will let them rise a bit higher. We'll put that funny little guy towards the middle. so we're going to slide these into a 450 degree oven for 10 to 15 minutes. You want them to be just golden brown. So we're going to slide into our 450 degree oven and check on these in 10 minutes. Our biscuits are ready. They weren't quite there at 10 minutes, but with 12 minutes, they're perfect. You can see that they're just a little bit brown in places and on the tops. All right, just golden. And one thing I like to do when I take them out of the oven, along with turning the oven off, is flipping them over so that as they cool a bit, they don't get too dark on the bottoms. So I'll flip those. And they did just come out of a 450 degree oven, but if you have a light touch, this works just fine without any tools. All right, so we're going to, whoop, that guy came in 2 pieces. That's okay. All right, so we're gonna let those set until they cool just enough to eat. It's time to crack into one of our biscuits. You can see that there's nice flaky layers there. I don't even think I need a knife to split this, and look at that. All right, so we can enjoy these just as they are as a side dish to an accompaniment to any kind of meal, or if you want to gild the lily, we can butter them, but if you do that, you've got to go with Irish butter. That's it for today. Please check us out every Friday for a new video and enjoy.